The first tidbit I have for you today is a local story, so Washington, but it actually starts out over in the Middle East, in a small country called Armenia. To give you an idea of where Armenia is, it's across from Ukraine, from the Black Sea, and north of Iran. This area was claimed as part of the Ottoman Empire for a long time, and eventually the Armenians rose up as a people. But they were quickly faced with massacres from the Turks. And between 1894 and 1896, tons of mass killings were done on the Armenian people. And in 1909 in particular, around 20,000 Armenians were killed. Many who could fled, but those who didn't got sent to fight in the First Balkan War, in which the Ottomans lost most of their empire and blamed it all on the Armenians, who were and are mostly Christians. Soon, a group of authoritarians called the Young Turks rose up and, full of hatred for the Armenians, overthrew the government in 1913. World War I broke out the next year. The Young Turks quickly sided with Germany and also ended up fighting against Russia, who beat them. The Young Turks again were so mad and blamed their loss on the Armenian Christians and marched them off into labor battalions. And eventually, they were sent out to the desert to concentration camps where many would be killed. The low-end estimates are between 600,000 and 1 million Armenians were killed by 1916. Now, somewhere in that period of time, two men fled for their lives. They didn't know each other, but separately fled. One man named Armen Turtsagayan, and I probably said that wrong, fled to the United States. And the other man named Mark Balabalan, and I probably also said that wrong, fled to England. Armen arrived in New York and made his way west to the growing city of Seattle to start his new life there. While in the city, he met a fellow Armenian visiting from England named Mark. They quickly became really good friends, and Mark decided to move to the United States as well. These two Armenians believed in the idea that with hard work, anything is possible. And so they started out opening a yogurt shop, but that failed. And then an Armenian restaurant, which did a little bit better, but still failed. So they decided to pivot and think back to their home. Seattle is a cold and wet place, and city life didn't suit them too well. So they went just east, not too far, but just past the mountains, to a place called Kashmir, a town that was warmer and based in agriculture, which they were used to back in their home country. So in 1918, they bought an orchard and called it Liberty Orchards. Times were tough as World War I was going on, and they also opened up something called the Northwest Evaporating Company, which dehydrated fruits, mostly apples, and sent most of it to the soldiers fighting so they could have an apple a day. Soon, Armen and Mark expanded to open a cannery, which they called Wenatchee Valley Foods. Sometime between World War I and World War II, they also decided to start making a traditional Armenian candy called Rahat Lakaum. And I probably said that wrong. They both loved that stuff so much, but of course they had to call it something else and marketed it as the confection of the fairies, called Aplets. It was a soft apple and walnut candy. A couple of years later, they added a second flavor, apricots and walnuts, and they called that Cotlets. Pretty soon, Aplets and Cotlets were big. Customers from all over ordered them from the mail. Pretty soon, Armen and Mark decided to put their full attention on the Aplets and Cotlets and sold the cannery and the evaporating company. In the 1950s, Armen and Mark both died, but their successors continued on building the brand, taking their candy to the World Fair in Seattle, and by that time, Aplets and Cotlets had been a Washington favorite. Some even tried to make the candy the state's official candy, but Almond Roca is also a Washington-based company, and they've had people try to make that the state's official candy. But there's no state official candy, and that's probably for the best. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that clip of Ricky's Historical Tidbits podcast. Go ahead and share it. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you can get all kinds of cool historical tidbits.